Shotgun with Charlie.
Riding shotgun refers to the practice of sitting next to the driver in a moving vehicle. The term riding shotgun came around after the time of the stagecoach, when somebody used to sit next to the driver holding a shotgun, in case they ran into bandits. My name is Charlie Cook, and I drive a lot. I like to talk to people while I'm driving, so I interview people in my car while I'm driving. Welcome to Riding Shotgun with Charlie. All right, before we start this episode of Riding Shotgun with Charlie, we thank you guys all for being here. Obviously, without you, we don't have much of a show. If you have not subscribed to YouTube, please do, and hit the notification bell so you get notified when shows come out. I've been watching the statistics on the YouTube, and something I'm trying to learn how to do, and I have seen that we are getting more people watching the show, but we still need people to subscribe to the show. So we thank you guys for doing that. All right, welcome to this episode of Riding Shotgun with Charlie. Today we are in Houston, Texas, and we are with Alex Sansone, who is the Suited Shooter. Would you look at this? This guy dresses unbelievably nice, and we met at the Concealed Carry Fashion Show last night, and I had to do what I can to look good. I mean, there's only so much I can do, but Alex looks awesome all the time. Like you could totally tell, you could totally spot him. Alex, thanks for being on the show.
Appreciate you having me, man.
I'm glad to have you. I'm glad to have you on the show. I'm glad we could work this out. All right, we're driving around Houston. It's the NRA annual meetings. The protesters are not out yet today. I think it's a little too early for them. Which is just as well.
Yeah, the concentration seemed to be dwindling. Yesterday was less than Friday.
Yeah.
Don't expect much of a turnout today.
Yeah.
So, thankfully, nothing's been too sporty.
Exactly. All right, so tell us about yourself, Alex. Where did you grow up? Did you grow up as a gun agnostic? Were you always into shooting?
So it's kind of sort of. I grew up on the East Coast, kind of in the DC area, and gun agnostic is kind of a good representation of it because my family was never adamantly pro or anti-gun growing up. My uncle had a couple, and whenever we would go out and visit him, he would let me shoot. I'm probably one of the last generations that has memories of actually shooting .22 rifles at summer camp. So it was never a taboo subject, but right. it was not a daily thing until living in the DC area, September of 2001, when when that tragedy unfolded. Yeah. That kind of changed my family's perspective, and that's kind of when my dad spearheaded. He kind of started becoming part of what Professor David Yamane calls gun culture 2.0, where the main focus was firearms expressly for personal protection. Right. Because prior to that, the only gun we'd had in the house was his trap gun. Okay. So a couple pistol caliber carbines, and sort of a loose defensive plan. And I'd always had an interest in firearms. I mean, I remember, I have a vivid memory of watching Air Force One on VHS and pausing it when that MP5 skips across the floor. And I know we've already probably lost a third of the audience because I said VHS.
So back in the 1900s, they had this thing called VHS. It's for, oh my God, I didn't know what it was for.
So it was video, but basically it's
right.
A flash drive, but it's this big and it only holds one movie.
Its memory is 2 hours.
Exactly. And at that, because The Godfather was what, 2 tapes? 2.
I did have two video VHS of The Godfather.
So sorry,
VHS. I think it was Video Home System.
If you say so.
I think so. We'll have to check it out.
So that tangent aside, but yeah, so paused Air Force One when that MP5 comes skidding across the floor, and I was like, "Ooh, what is that? That looks cool." So there was always an interest in them, but once I got into college, came down south, went to school in New Orleans, and that is where the interest in personal protection started to manifest. And it was interesting because, as you can imagine, anytime you have the sheltered population of college kids in the heart of any kind of urban environment, there's always going to be that clash of the people that live there versus the people that are just visiting the student body.
Yeah.
And so a lot of there was never any violent crime to speak of. It was all property crime. So like backpacks getting stolen, the occasional indecent exposure kind of stuff.
Well, you were a party animal.
Oh no, not on my end. I'm just saying
okay.
this was the crime that the student body was subjected to. And it was just interesting because this was, I was still in my teens at that point, before I'd had any formal defensive training. But I was already able to kind of draw these parallels. I was like, all right, so the kids that are just leaving their valuable stuff out, or walking around constantly with their headphones in this bubble, assuming that they are safe.
They're safe, sure.
Seem to be the ones that are suffering these consequences. And so that's when the pieces kind of started to come together. I came out to Texas in 2008, spent the first couple years here working at a gun shop, and one of my coworkers at the time is who exposed me to open enrollment training. So I took my first class in about 2009, and then spent the subsequent several years kind of doing all the stuff that most people do and shouldn't, which is just going to the range and turning ammunition into expensive noise without any real productive
formal training, right?
Yeah.
And you're just going down and putting holes in paper.
And thankfully, over the course of that, I got introduced to some folks that sort of further encouraged me to pursue some additional training. So the class that I took after that was the Masad Ayub Group Mag 40, which is his deadly force law, which I highly recommend.
Yeah, I took that last year out in Sioux Falls with Mass.
The depth of that is just staggering.
So here we are Sunday morning. I'm going to say there's 23 protesters?
Yeah, a couple dozen. Nothing exciting.
Nothing exciting. Nothing. Thank you, sir.
So yeah, it was Mag 40, then Craig Douglas's ECQC, and then that's kind of where I got bit by the training bug and took it from there. And right now I'm sitting at about 400 hours total of open enrollment training logged. So
that's impressive too.
Within that time is when I met my wife, and that is when I realized that I needed to start dressing better, because we have all seen those couples out in public where there is just this glaring disparity between the two, and it makes you go, why in the hell is she with that guy?
And
I was
that guy.
And the realization was that I was reflecting poorly on her.
Sure.
And that was never anything that she said. That was never anything that she intimated.
Right.
I just realized that it was, it was discordant. It didn't make sense.
Right. Now, see, when I see a guy when I see an attractive woman with a guy that isn't the same caliber, I guess is a good way. I always say, man, he must be in sales.
I mean, you're not wrong, because I am and have been pretty much since I came to Houston. So, I mean, stereotypes exist for a reason. But at that point, I started doing what every millennial does, and I resort to YouTube for most of my information. I got some value out of it, but a lot of the style influencers were not delving too deeply into the whys and the hows, and so I was struggling to understand why certain things I would try would work and others would feel like a costume. Finally came across a gentleman by the name of Tanner Guzy, who runs a page called Masculine Style, and he really quantifies it in a way that I think resonates to a lot of people. Without just delving too deeply into his material, the three style archetypes are the rugged, the refined, and the rakish. And very high level, rugged is Indiana Jones, refined is James Bond, and rakish is Captain Jack Sparrow. Just to give you an idea of what that is.
Okay.
And everybody's a combination of those three. And once you have a handle on that, you can kind of start understanding what specific pieces of clothing, certain fabrics, certain color palettes play into that, because we've all had that experience where you go to put something on and it feels alien to you. So once I started with that, I also at that point transitioned to where I was in a legitimate white-collar suit and tie job every day. And the challenge...
What were you doing for work?
I was actually in, at that point, funeral services. So quite literally, it was nothing but like dark suits, white shirts, and you're having to interact with families at a very uncomfortable time.
Yeah.
But it was one of those things where I still preferred to carry a firearm as regularly as I could.
Sure.
But when you are in such close proximity to people, the analogy that I use is every social interaction that you have is another raffle ticket, and eventually one of them is going to hit to where you are going to either be discovered to be armed or at the very least deviate from their norm enough to warrant additional scrutiny, which is what you don't want. Because at the very high level, there's the whole, well, just you don't dress like a gun dude, so avoid the Solomons and the 511 pants and the grunt style t-shirts.
Those are always dead giveaways.
They are, but in the same vein, even how you're wearing the clothing that you're wearing can still cause you problems. Another mentor of mine, Claude Warner, the tactical professor.
Oh yeah. I've had Claude on the show.
Oh, fantastic! Yeah, he's a solid dude, and I highly recommend people check out his content. But he was telling me that when he was working for the commercial real estate firm that he did, he tried that solution that everybody recommends of, oh, we'll just wear your pants a size bigger. And he had coworkers that were like, are you losing weight? And that in and of itself is theoretically innocuous enough. But again, when you start deviating from somebody's template, especially when there's someone that sees you on a regular basis, if something breaks their norm, if it's weird enough, they're going to look closer at it. And the entire point of concealed carry is to just drift by and not ping anybody's radar at all.
Yeah.
So when I was working white-collar jobs, the struggle that I had was virtually everybody that was putting out content either currently or previously carried a firearm professionally. And even beyond that, most of the folks were within social spheres.
All right, hold on a second. I'm not from here. Where do we turn?
You're good. You can turn here.
Which lane?
This one's fine. Yeah, it's...
This is a little freaky. This is why I have the dash cam.
Oh yeah, no, I gotcha.
Can we get over to the left and keep going straight? No, because it says road closed. Because that's the train tracks.
Correct.
Holy moly. Sorry about that.
No, you're good.
All right, so keep going.
So within their social spheres, their entire, if you'll excuse the term, area of operations is one where being armed is somewhere on the spectrum between expected or at least tolerated. Whereas I've been in environments where going armed is somewhere between unusual and unacceptable. And so the degree of concealment that's required for that is considerably higher because the consequences for being discovered are considerably higher. And again, in the early aughts, the sentiment was everybody has to be carrying a full-size duty gun and a reload and this and that and all of this.
Yeah.
And while that's certainly the optimal tool set, it's not necessarily the one that's contextually appropriate. So I started just playing with things and trying to figure out what really worked. Unfortunately, one of the things that I've kind of become most known for is I'm the only person that talks publicly about being discovered carrying a gun against company policy and losing a job for it.
Did that happen to you?
Yeah, it absolutely did.
Really?
And that's one of the few things that just gives me a case of the red ass is all these people on the internet that just go through their posturing, chest beating of, oh, we'll just get another job, or oh, if you value your life, you'll do X, Y, Z. It's like, what, man? I bought that ticket. I saw that movie. I don't recommend it.
Right.
So
I get the sentiment that free men don't ask for permission, but you still have to pay the bills. And unless you're going to become self-employed and own your own business and legit, like to me, the wild frontier of the 2000s is to be self-employed and saying, hey, listen, I'm going to go this alone. I'm going to have my own business. I'm going to make my own money. I'm going to make my own hours. I'm going to do all this stuff on my own, and then no one can tell you what to do.
Precisely. But that's not something that happens overnight.
It's not something that happens overnight. And I know plenty of people that, I know some people that are gun folks that are scientists, and they work at a lab, and they're not going to start their own lab.
Precisely. You know? Not to mention the fact that, scientists, medical field, stuff like that, those communities are small enough that if you violate policy like that, there is a very good chance you are never working in that field again. And now all of a sudden you've got $250,000 plus worth of debt that you're still responsible for.
Right, and you're out Uber
and having to start over. Yeah. So, again, I'm not sitting here trying to tell anybody how to live their lives because everybody's circumstance is their own circumstance.
Sure.
But that's why I started talking about what I did, was because I was not able to point to anybody else and go, that looks a lot like me. And not from the superficial standpoint, but just none of it sounded like my life.
Right.
And that's I think one area where we kind of do ourselves a disservice is that the thought is, well, that doesn't make sense to me, so it can't possibly be relevant to anybody.
Right.
And it can inhibit the sort of the overall growth of the 2A community, and it can drive people. It can drive some of the gun agnostics away that might otherwise look and go, okay, as opposed to kind of no, if you're not like us, then don't bother showing up.
Right. Which to me is, it's a bit fuddish.
Yeah.
And saying, hey, listen, if you don't wear 911s with 12, 14 pockets in them and carry all the stuff, you can't be like us.
Yeah, it's interesting because a couple of folks that I'm familiar with are setting the internet on fire right now because they are kind of actively pursuing the idea of carrying 22 revolvers for personal protection.
I'm not going to say it's a bad idea. I got it very much like your family. I wasn't a gun guy. I was a gun agnostic until September 11, 2001. And my son was 9 months old, and I said, I got this little boy I need to protect. And, we had a daughter the following year. So I got these little people I need to protect, and I need to raise them, and they're my responsibility. And since they're my responsibility, I have to be around to raise them, and I need to be able to protect them, but I also need to be able to protect me and my then wife. And that's how I got into it. And I lost my train of thought. 22 revolvers. So my objective was to carry a revolver because I liked I guess I like the romance of carrying a little 5-shot snub-nose revolver. So that was my goal. Like when I got to the point where I said I want to carry a gun, I want to carry a 5-shot revolver. And I got to the point where at first I couldn't carry a gun because my license didn't allow me. So I carried a knife. And then you run into one guy and they're like, hey man, let's see your knife. Pull out one knife. I'm like, good, let's see your other knife. And you're like, 2 knives? Like, yeah, dude, if you have one, you might as well have 2. Then you start carrying 2 knives. Then we moved and moved to a new town. I started to carry. I got a 5-shot revolver. And then I started carrying a couple of speed strips of extra ammo because I don't think I'm going to need all the stuff. You know what I mean? I don't think I'm going to need a 15-round magazine and another 15-round mag and a spare mag and everything else. So I really care the bare minimum for what someone should carry. Yep.
And that's the thing is the gear part of the equation is easy because all it takes is money. And unfortunately, for some folks, it takes very little thought.
Right.
It might be a cursory Google search. They whip out the credit card, and now they've got the thing. And the thing is the solution, so they now have the solution to the problem, so they're good. But, yeah, when you're not careful, like, it turns into that scene from The Jerk,
All I need.
Exactly.
You're carrying all your stuff. All I need is this chair, and this skateboard, and this
lamp.
Knife, and this lamp. All I need is this pump-action shotgun.
Yeah.
And 14 spare mags.
And so, Claude being one of them, Daryl Bulkey being another, they talk in great depth about, really spending some conscious thought on what your actual risk profile is. And allowing the mission to drive the gear, as Pat Rogers would say. And given that a majority of what we as civilian defenders are going to be confronted with is assault-based crime, I think Claude was the first one to use the term break in contact, which is what we're trying to achieve. Mm-hmm. And for a lot of civilian cases, the capacity is not necessarily the deciding factor. Right. And when the reality of it is we are going to have to live with the gun a whole lot more than we're ever going to have to use the gun. Mm-hmm. You can certainly make the firearm the focal point of everything and then build your life around that. Right. Or you can find what you think is the suitable balance between your preferred lifestyle and your preferred defensive tools. Mm-hmm. And that's the vein that I kind of started going down, because I realized that the gun was becoming a limiting factor for me. And, you know, again, based on what I mentioned, this tool that I carry to protect myself is, you know, was a contributing factor in basically the worst event of my life. Mm-hmm. So, you know, at what point it's almost the definition of irony at that point. So, you know, that's not to say that I don't carry firearms anymore. I absolutely do. But, you know, I'm also spending time on empty-hand combatives, on criminal psychology and victim selection, on verbal agility, and all the other components of it, because with a lot of people, their self-defense thought process ends at the firearm. Oh yeah, sure. And that's the challenge, especially when you're talking with either new shooters or anytime people start taking more ownership of their own personal protection. It's a very delicate balance of not making things too overwhelming and fatalistic, but still driving home the point that there's still a lot more work to do. Right. So it's a very thin line to walk. You know, it's I think everyone's this way. They think they're going to get a gun and that's going to be the magic talisman that stops everything from happening. And then they'll take one class and maybe take another class, and then they start to learn a little bit more, read some articles, read some books, and say, "Ooh, I need to know more." Like there's more to it than just carrying a gun and being able to shoot the bad guy. The two that I think are the best resources at painting the broadest picture. Tom Gibbons' most recent one, the ABCs of Concealed Carry, and then one of Mass's recent books, I think it is Deadly Force, What the Experts Want You to Know. Okay. And so, because there's the chapters in there are all written by different people, and each one of them. Let's face it, that's the best way to write a book, is to get a bunch of other people to write it and put it together, exactly. Put your name on the cover. I mean, you know, let's be honest. The man's been doing this for enough time that I'm sure has found the absolute best ways to do just about everything. Absolutely. So, but yeah, and so I think that those two, they're not super dense reads, but they do give you the appropriate perspective of everything that's involved, and that's the challenge is that there can be a lot of balls to keep in the air at once. Yeah, definitely. Now, how does all of this lead to you starting a YouTube channel? So, for the first year, it was actually a written blog, because the desire was to maintain a certain amount of anonymity. Yeah. But after I started getting into some more technical aspects, probably the most popular article that I wrote was the one that I did on the 5 elements of a quality tuckable holster. Because that was one beef that I had, was there were so many products that were being marketed as tuckable, and from a purely technical standpoint, yes, you were able to tuck your shirt between the mounting point and the body of the holster, but it was in no way discreet, because you still had clips or loops or something on the belt with nothing to explain them away.
You know what my explanation is? It's my colostomy bag, and it's leaking.
A lot of people will default to that. I will say that if it is a passing interaction with somebody you will never see again, yeah, you can get away with that.
Right.
But if it's somebody at the office, are you willing to live that lie for the rest of the duration of your employment?
Listen, you ever watch Seinfeld? You like George Costanza? This is nothing.
So, I will say that, like in the Filster workshop, John and Sarah do a very good job about addressing some of those eraser phrases that are popular in that are kind of popular in theory, but don't necessarily flush out as well in practice on a broad scale, or at least being able to identify what the potential pitfalls of it are. Okay. Because that is the challenge. Is if you're like, if you know whatever medical device that you're trying to explain away, there's always a chance that the person you're talking to has one, and so they may be able to call you on your bullshit.
Right.
So, but again, it's finding the balance of what is appropriate to the context, and that's where people get hung up, is that there is no singular one answer. You know, because there are so many moving pieces, it's always a shifting target.
Yeah.
But to go back to that, after the year of writing the blog, a friend of mine who works in the firearms marketing space told me, he's like, dude, honestly, if it's more than 500 words, it should really be a video. And so I was like, yeah, okay, I'll try that. And so I've been doing the YouTube channel pretty much ever since.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That is very cool. How often do you put content on?
So I do videos once a week. They go live every Friday morning.
Every Friday morning? Cool. Do you, as a guy that does video, I am a one-man show.
Yeah, same here.
Legit one-man show. I film everything. I edit everything. I had to learn how to edit. I had to learn how to do all of that stuff.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. So the only person I have to blame for the quality of my content is me.
Is me.
Yep.
Yeah, I hate that. There have been a few times when I've edited, put hours into editing a video, render it, all that stuff, put it up on YouTube. I go back, I watch it on YouTube to take some notes, and I see something I screwed up. And I'm like,
oh, absolutely.
I look at my watch, I'm like, I've got 10.5 hours till I have to put this video out. Let's fix it now.
You're light years beyond me. You've got the multiple camera setup. You're syncing audio.
Right.
I'm much more the Scorsese-esque single camera shot kind of guy. Yeah. Welcome to Houston. Our roads suck.
Oh my God.
But yeah, so that's Friday mornings. Videos go live, and I try and maintain a balance. Sometimes I'm talking about social skills. Sometimes I'm talking about wardrobe integration. Sometimes I talk about gear. Sometimes I just have some fun with it. The video that went live on Friday was what you're carrying based on how you're dressed. So
very cool. Yep. All right, so let's go back to the tuckable carry. Which holster's the best? So
the nice thing about it is there's not a singular best holster. Well, there's not.
Right.
But it's a combination of a few different factors. Mostly what I found is it's a well-constructed Kydex shell of your preferred flavor. The ones that I have personally used and have had good success with have been from Filster, Dark Star Gear, KSG Armory, Keeper's Concealment, and Tenacore. There are little things about certain ones that, like for example, on the Tenacore Velo that I ran, the wing, or excuse me, the wedge on it is physically molded into the body of the holster. And I found that for my preferences, my build, and my carry position, I don't care for that. I prefer to have a wedge that I can attach and adjust the positioning of, and the wedge being the second component. And without kind of having one here to describe it, I'm going to borrow your phone for a second.
Sure.
So if you've got the holster body, the wedge is a pad that goes at the bottom of the holster towards the muzzle, and it certainly provides some cushioning, but the other thing that it does is it presses the muzzle away from the body, which then tips the grip in toward the body, aiding in concealment. The third component is on the trigger guard side, a wing, which which will, with belt pressure, tip the grip in towards the body again.
Okay.
At a different angle. And so a good Kydex holster that can accommodate a wing. The wedge part's pretty easy because those are typically just Velcroed on if you're doing one that's aftermarket. And then the other aspect of it is the only clips that I have found to be suitably discreet are, oddly enough, there's a company called Discreet Carry Concepts, and they make a series of short clips that are designed to run behind the belt and only attach to the waistband of your pants. So when when you've got everything configured right, then there is virtually no visual signature on the belt line. Now, the only caveat to that is since you are hanging the gun off of just the waist of your pants, there are some weight limitations, so you will be hard pressed to carry something like a Beretta 92 or a full size Glock 19 with a flashlight on it. To aid in that, though, the pants have to fit properly, because if the only thing that's supporting that weight is the waistband that is resisting gravity, there's going to be some sagging. So it's really critical for the front panel of your pants, you know, like where the fly and zipper are, to be pretty solid. Well, it needs to fit you properly. And when I say that, it's not tight, but there can't be a whole lot of excess fabric there, because if the pants fit properly with the holster, then at that point it is now hugging the entire holster body against you. And so the friction between the pants, your body, and the holster are kind of what's primarily holding it in place and kind of a macro level, and then the clips are just there as kind of micro support. So if you are not running, for example, the Filster Enigma, which is the product that I was demoing at the fashion show.
Hopefully we can get some pictures of that.
Oh yeah, I've got a few that I'll be happy to send you.
Okay, cool.
I'm friends with John and Sarah. I'm not like a paid spokesperson or anything. So yeah, like the 3 Enigmas that I have, I've paid my own hard-earned money for. So just because I know YouTube can get kind of wonky about the paid promotion stuff. Anyways, that has become my kind of 100% solution, regardless of how I'm dressed, because it allows much more flexibility in the positioning of the holster, both rotationally and vertically. But if you're going to go just with a more traditional holster attached to the belt line, then if you are in a position where you need something tucked in, those Discreet Carry Concepts clips are an essential in my. That's the only piece of it that I really think is non-negotiable, because the wing and the wedge are dependent on your specific concealment needs. So if the gun is hiding under the clothing against your body without those, then you certainly don't need them. But if you are struggling with the grip printing or anything like that, those are the elements that will get you from the 80 to the 95 or the 98% mark. But yeah, anything where there's a visible attachment point on the belt once the shirt's tucked in my mind, is a no-go.
All right. Good to know. This is all great stuff. All right, listen, we are almost where we need to be.
Sure.
How can people find the Suited Shooter?
Absolutely. So yeah, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, all of them the same. It's just the Suited Shootist, and it's the easiest way to find me. So if you like the content, cool. You know, feel free to subscribe and like me on all the various social media platforms. Awesome. We also have a Facebook group as well, Bespoke Solutions, and that's kind of the think tank where people are, if they're kind of getting into all of this, it's a great place to ask questions and kind of do some trial and error stuff.
Very cool.
So yeah.
Awesome. Listen, thank you so much for being on the show. I know we're still on the road here.
All good.
We've got to wrap things up. That's all right. We're back to where we started here. Thank you so much for being on the show. I'm going to put some links for all of your social media.
Fantastic. It was a pleasure, and appreciate you having me.
Thank you. I do want to send, I'm going to look in this one because there's a light on that one. I do want to thank Rob Campbell and Amanda Suffecool, Rob and Amanda from Eye on the Target Radio, for letting me use their stagecoach while we are here in Houston. If you have not subscribed to the If you haven't subscribed to Riding Shotgun with Charlie, please do that on the YouTube. If you are not a member of the Second Amendment Foundation, you need to join them, saf.org. You can also donate at the CCRBKA, the Citizens Committee for the Right to Keep and Bear Arms. And you need to check out the Self-Defense Radio Network, sdrn.us. It is all your pro-freedom podcasts in one place. And I need to pay attention, drop Alex off. He's got somewhere he needs to go to. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we will see you next time. Thanks a lot, man.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.